These were nightly battles that went on. I mean, it was every single night a big drawn-out, violent confrontation with, both verbal violence and physical violence and substance abuse.
Shaun Hardin's childhood was filled with fear. His mother married 8 times, and nearly all of her husbands were abusive, beginning with Shaun's birth father.
When I was 4 or 5 years old, my father started to sexually abuse myself and my sister. My mom found out about this, and he wound up getting arrested. It really started a process of me not trusting father figures or men really at all from that point. It took a lot for someone to gain my trust.
Her pattern of attracting abusive men continued.
And each relationship became more and more abusive. The substance abuse became worse also. Then there were drugs, different drugs, marijuana, cocaine.
The hostile environment took its toll on Shaun and his siblings.
It really caused me to become numb, to become really good at pushing feelings down, and it caused me to become very introverted.
When Shaun was a teenager, someone invited him to their church youth group.
That was the first place that I really heard about God and Christ and everything that he had done. And that was when I actually became saved.
But Shaun became disillusioned when he sought advice from church leaders about the abusive situation at home.
A lot of times the advice that I got was, God will make a way, or God has a plan. What it caused me to do was to think that somehow it was God's plan for me to be sexually abused as a child. Somehow it was God's plan for me to deal with this violence and drugs and all these things that were going on at home.
Shaun began drifting from the church and God.
It also gave me a view that Christianity was more about, you got to survive whatever God throws at you. If this was God that was planning these things, I didn't know what he was going to throw at me next.
After high school, Shaun moved to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. A talented singer, he got work performing in a show. He also fell into the party scene and even further away from God.
I got as far away from God as I'd ever been since I'd been saved. I got involved with drinking a lot. It was the beach, it was a vacation town, so it was a party lifestyle. I got involved with drugs. I was involved in all kinds of bad things when I was down there. I loved God, and I knew that Jesus died for me, but I kept them at such a distance that because I didn't really understand the relationship and how it's supposed to work.
Shaun's parents and younger siblings came to visit him for his 21st birthday party. That night, something happened that caused Shaun to do some serious soul-searching.
My little brother and sister were upstairs sleeping on a sofa bed, and when I went upstairs, there were 2 people that were doing cocaine off the top of a TV that was about 5 feet from where my little brother and sister were sleeping. And it was at that moment that I realized I had become exactly what I knew that I wasn't supposed to become. I knew drugs and being that person was bad. Because I had seen it, I knew that that is not who I wanted to be.
Shaun knew he had to get back to church.
I realized that I needed to seek God and figure out, okay, well, what is this really about? What Christianity is, what it means. I knew it had to be more than what I had heard or what I had learned.
He eventually moved back to the Nashville area where he met his wife, Lori, and found a good church. One Sunday, they heard a Bible verse that would change both of their lives.
That was the first place that I ever heard Jeremiah 29:11, that says, I know the plans that I have for you, plans to prosper you, not to harm you, plans for hope and a future. Right there, that one verse just blew everything about my faith out, because it says in there, I don't have plans to harm you. As we got more and more into the Word at church, and as both me and my wife learned more and more about what God says about us, I began to start praying more, really growing closer in my relationship. I was able to trust God in my marriage, to trust God for my happiness, for love, for 100% everything that I needed. I could trust Him.
Shaun and Lori both rededicated their lives to Christ. Shaun later joined the Nashville Police Force in the SWAT division. God also opened doors for him to use his musical talents as a worship leader. Today, Shaun finally knows who he really is in Christ.
Like it says, God has not given me a spirit of fear, but a power, love, and of sound mind. Now I know that I am not an abused kid. I am not any of those things that happened to me in my past. I am who God says that I am. My identity comes from God, and my identity is in Christ and what He has done for me.
Amazing grace.